of the biggest flaws in general culinary programs in my mind is that there's, how you go to school and you take this course and you get a grade, and you take this course, you get a grade. You add those grades up, you get a GPA and you graduate and stuff. Nowhere in that program are you finding out, can they really do it, right? Can we put it all together? Can they really do it? And that for me is a big deal. So that's why we came up with these extreme finals where you're like just 24 hours of getting your face hammered off. Can you do this like for real?
This episode of Tap and Table is brought to you in part by Goat Patch Brewing Company, the home of balanced brews. Goat Patch Brewing Company started out like all great ideas, just a bunch of good friends with a common passion sitting around a kitchen table. Before deciding on a name, a location, recipes, or even a brand identity, they all agreed on a shared set of values: balanced brews, community engagement, and adventure. Goat Patch Brewing is proud to play a large part in the community by providing Colorado Springs and the surrounding areas with masterfully crafted, balanced brews. The brewery features weekly recurring and special community festival-style events, as well as private event rentals, and yes, sometimes even goats. Visit www.goatpatchbrewing.com or find them on social media at Goat Patch Brewing to keep up to date with all the fun happening at the patch. And now, back to the rest of the episode.
You ready when I'm ready? Yeah, I'm ready when you're ready. Sweet. All right. Welcome to Tap and Table. I'm Matthew Schniper. This is my co-host, Ryan Hannigan. Today, we are with the Reverend Dr. Chef Victor Matthews. I'm going to let him explain that. That's real. I'm serious about every one of those words. And maybe that just sets the stage for how interesting and weird this episode is going to be. This guy is sort of like the Forrest Gump of the distilling culinary world. Like, he does everything.
I don't run quite as much, but otherwise.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's straight Forrest Gump. We were just chatting a minute ago off camera, and he called himself a psychotic entrepreneur. I think that actually kind of helps sum it up pretty well, too.
Yeah. Well, the technical term is serial entrepreneur. So you can either go with a killer, murderer reference, which is okay. All those things kind of are built into what we're doing. No, but seriously. So the Reverend thing, my PhD's in theology. I teach Bible. I'm a big time, believer, and I really feel like overwhelmingly blessed. Like everything in my life is so crazy and amazing. And for me, that's divine for me. Like how can you do all this stuff? It's because of divine, power. It's like an external battery source, an infinite battery source. People are like, you can't do 5 businesses at one time. And like I said, my friends are retiring, and here I am building a new restaurant. They're like, are you out of your mind? I'm like, man, I feel awesome right now. Like, I feel like I'll open something else tonight. That's how I feel. But so the Reverend really is real. So, I do preach occasionally and teach. It's a lot of teaching. My whole life is teaching. So that's the doctor part, right? So theology and founding a school and then running other departments in other schools. And I've been an educator, since 1990. So, whatever that is, 34 years or whatever. I just am a massive lover of knowledge. Like just absorb, but also, teach. So it's both ends. So I keep getting educated. That's how I got all those degrees. It's like, not because I wanted a pedigree, but it's just because I love it so much. I want to know something about everything in the world.
And we're missing one thing too, is you're also a distiller, which isn't part of the Reverend Dr. Chef. Like, you got to add a fourth
kind
thing.
of a hard to explain thing too. My original background family it's like a Southern Baptist. So that was the distiller part's kind of hard to rectify, right? Anyway,
no pun intended.
No pun intended. I didn't know if you had another word.
I guess
that's pretty cool.
Caught that one.
That's pretty cool.
So.
The first time I saw a still run, I was a kid. And so in the mountains of North Carolina, it was, there was all that. So like the fine dining chef thing, like the Blackbird restaurant back in the day, you might get with one of your 9-course meal or whatever, you might get a limoncello or a brandy or, something I had made, like a port that we had made. So I was always doing that. But then when the Waldo Canyon fire happened and the Blackbird restaurant had to shut down because nobody could come up. Remember how they used to shut down the pass every time it rained? So I'd had to pivot. And I was running a still anyway. My family's been distilling for over 130 years. And it was one of those booms going on for craft distilleries. And I was like, you know what? We should definitely just pivot and make it a distillery. So the Black Bear Distillery was born,
But true
a
to
little over 10
fashion,
ago.
though, I remember talking to you about that. I've known Victor for a long time, and I'm sure we'll get back into that. But at that time, you weren't just talking about doing a distillery. You were like, oh, and we're going to have like donkey-drawn grinders for the mill.
I remember
and,
you telling me about this.
Yeah, and we're going to have like our own kiln and our own drying room, and we're going to grow this, we're going to grow that. And like, it was always like 9 levels deep of crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. It wasn't just
some
rectifying and putting
of
a thing
those
in.
levels are still existing. So we're very, very close with a lot of farmers in San Luis Valley. And our main guys are based in Alamosa. It's one of the oldest family farms in Colorado. So everything but the sugarcane is grown here. And I was going to try to go sugarcane here, but for some reason, all the greenhouse space is taken in Colorado.
I have no idea.
I think
why.
everybody loves heirloom tomatoes. I mean, they are really good, but anyway, I couldn't get a greenhouse for obvious reasons. So we have to get that from Louisiana and Brazil. But other than that, every single thing is from Colorado, small farms. So the philosophy that I had as a chef, right, which is the farm to table thing, is translated into the distillery. So it's a farm to glass thing. So that level of growing it. So there's pictures of, in the fields doing all that. So we do that. So we also have I do have the 1,000-year-old grinding wheels sitting in front of the bear as like a really cool, like decor.
We just need the donkeys.
Well, the donkey thing was more complicated. And of course, PETA was concerned about
The FDA is going to be angry.
donkey slavery, but it really isn't that type of deal. I was going to actually use that because
the rescue. It was going to be
the
a
donkey was
rescue.
going to work 1 hour a week, and it was going to be a rescue. So we had a whole donkey and horse rescue that we're partnered with. But some local guys are like, I don't know about the donkey thing. Anyway, plus technical data wise, reverse engineering 1,000-year-old wheels where they don't hit together and spark and blow the whole place up was problematic.
Yeah.
So it was a better idea not to do that. But yeah. So we were going to grind our own stuff and grow our own stuff and do everything start to finish, which is the way I think. But a lot of that didn't work out. But we still do everything we do a full circle too. So when we finish using the grain, it goes back to pig farmers. So organic grain comes in, we make spirits, it goes back to organic pig farmers.
Awesome.
So we do a full circle.
I want to come back to that in a big way. I also want to tell our viewers where we are today. You're probably wondering, this conversation just started in the middle, which is great. That's how we're going to roll all day. But we're in a unique space. It's the Briarhurst in Manitou Springs. It has a rich history, which I'll ask Victor to tell a little bit of. But the reason we're here is Paragon Culinary School is currently teaching classes and based out of here. Actually, the last 4 years?
5
years. Okay. So Paragon is in its 20th year anniversary coming up.
Yep.
Yep.
So July 4th weekend of 2004 is the founding time of Paragon. And we started on the original location, which is over off of Sinton Road. And that went well for a little while, but there was a whole bunch of complications involving property and leasing and everything else. So we spent some time over at the YWAM base off of Garden of the Gods, which is wonderful. Those guys are just so amazing, giving, caring, beautiful people. And we were there for a while. It was fun. But then we had to get, they were growing really rapidly. And so we needed our own space. And I met with Ken Healy back in 2019, the owner of the Briarhurst up till recently. He's a great guy. And Janice and Ken and welcomed us in, and we set up a whole system where we kind of partner up. It works really well because a place like the Briarhurst has dinners and they have the weddings and all the events. And since the weddings and events are focused on the summer and the dinners are focused on evenings and weekends, it's the opposite of school. So the school is like daytimes and winters, right? And so it kind of was a perfect symbiosis. It came together smoothly and it worked out. And we've been here for years. We love it here.
And the cool thing about Paragon too, what's very different, we're not talking like a very formal like Johnson & Wales or Cordon Bleu or one of the institutional culinary kitchens. This is a alternative, I don't even know, ragtag bootstrap. I'm just going to make words up. You can tell it better, but it's very different. I think it's like Victor's crazy boot camp. I wrote an article for the Indie years ago about their final. The students have to go through this incredibly intensive, insane last cooking course after a written exam. And it's all day. They cook all 3 meals and they run around town. They start at breakfast over here and then we have lunch, live fire over in the Garden of the Gods and then back to dinner somewhere. And I went with them and I did 7 of these as one of the judges. in a row and then wrote this big story. But it's wild to watch that happen. And a lot of kids that come out of the school that are in the spring scene now, like Bobby Couch for Green Line Grill. That's just one. Who else is? I mean, who are the Paragon students still in the game right now?
They're everywhere. So a lot of the chefs that were started and have been at places like, oh my gosh, they're all of them basically. A lot of Broadmoor guys, all the mainline hotels, plus all the independent restaurants. So we've had plenty of people at almost everywhere you can think of. Like for instance, so take Wobbly Olive. Probably the majority of their chefs over the years had relationship. Sean and I are old friends, and that relationship's been very strong for years. Basically and we've had a ton of people with Brother over there. I mean, basically any cool place that's really doing awesome stuff. It's those guys. We were the opening chefs at 503 West were Paragon guys. I mean, it's been so many.
Justin's over to Fimmer
and all those places. We got guys at Till. We got guys over there.
And you have
Darn fly.
You don't just have people who are working in other places. You've got people who started their own. Like, didn't Eli start the wing truck? Right, he's got the wings.
He's trying to come. He's basically coming back at the championship this year, and Flighty Fowl. So we probably have 5 or 6 guys with trucks. We've got about 5 chop champions. We have a ton of Food Network guys, a lot of food trucks, a lot of restaurants. I mean, everybody's out there in the world. I mean, we got guys in France and England and the Philippines, really awesome guys in the Philippines. I mean, they're all over the place.
So like tell someone who, again, like I couched it as a very different kind of culinary program.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode just on that, but squeeze it down for me. Like, tell someone really quickly how Paragon is different from the main ones. You probably start with foundations and knife skills.
Yeah. So the super quick version is it was a response to really large schools, right? Really large school experience is a different kind of experience. You go there, you've got dorms and teams and all this cool stuff. And I love college. I mean, I've been to many colleges, but a group of 1,000 people as a student body for a culinary school is not really ideal. We really need to get serious, and we need to get down and cook this stuff. So like there's even been things like online training, which is kind of ludicrous, obviously, right? You can't learn to cook online. You might learn basic information, but when it comes to what does it taste like? What are you going to overnight the chili to me and have me send you an email about how it tasted? I mean, none of that makes it. So what it was a reaction because the culinary world expanded dramatically in the 90s. And suddenly we had all these graduates that didn't really know how to cook or like properly use a knife and all those things. So at the time I was like one of the top chefs in Colorado, right? I had won the governor's symposium in 2001 and 2. So like 3 years in a row. And I was the leader of sort of like the federations of the culinary things and also the restaurant stuff. So a lot of people were coming to me like, what are we going to do about this? This is going sideways. This is not going the right direction. The training. So Paragon was a response. So it's a small number of students. We're capped by charter at 50. So I'm running 25, 30 people typically. Everybody's hands-on. So every single graduate we've ever had for 20 years, I know their names, I know who they are, I know their families, I know what they're good at, what they're bad at, how we need to react to whatever needs to happen in their lives, what their goals and dreams are. So it's extremely specific and it's extremely targeted. And it's a very different kind of program. And so in order to check, one of the biggest flaws in general culinary programs in my mind is that there's, how you go to school and you take this course and you get a grade, and you take this course, you get a grade. You add those grades up, you get a GPA and you graduate and stuff. Nowhere in that program are you finding out, can they really do it, right? Mm-hmm. Can we put it all together? Can they really do it? And that for me is a big deal. So that's why we came up with these extreme finals where you're like just 24 hours of getting your face hammered off. Can you do this? Like for real? And
we've seen them struggle. I mean, I know some of those dinners when they're good, we're out at like 9:30 or 10 and we're like, oh, that's great. Like that was great service. But there's somewhere where they're like, oh, we got him. We've had a fruit fly plaguing this since we began.
Hounding us. That should have got him. If not, I apologize.
That's all right.
It probably made a very weird noise on
he's
mic.
back.
It did not. Got away.
But anyway, some of these dinners would go well past midnight because the
Flying
kids
ninja.
are struggling. It's like they're only on course 5, and we're looking at our watches. And we're like, oh, this is a rough one. And like,
did you get him?
I don't know if I got him. I don't think I missed him.
It's just gonna be the running gag of this show.
I think it might
catch the fly.
Even if we kill the fly, it'll be like.
But anyway, yeah, that the intensive finals are insane at every level. And I've probably judged most years here and there. So I've been around a lot of it, but it's wild to see what the kids come up with too. And they blow your mind sometimes on a course. And you're like, all
Well,
right,
I'll tell you a funny
legit.
story about the beginning of that. So obviously being a fully certified school, state and federal approved and all that, we sit in front of those committees sometimes. And early on in the early days, I was sitting in front of the school board, the Colorado big school board that runs everything. Right. And, in the paperwork, you're not allowed to say things like in advertising and paperwork, like we're the best or whatever. Paragon means the best, but you can't really say we're the best. You got to be more low key and open than that, and I totally agree marketing wise. But I had, I think it was the lieutenant governor. Anyway, one of the people on the board at the question time at the end of the section to approve the school said, I just have one question about this word extreme. He used this term in the paperwork for the approval, this word extreme, the extreme finals. And this word extreme seems like a little much, maybe like almost like saying the best, right? So, I just wanted to ask you why you chose to use that word extreme. So I explained, I said, well, we have a written final that's based off the bar exam. So I got a copy of the bar exam and I recreated it, the same length and number of questions and type of questions, but for cooks. They're like, what? Yeah, so that's the written. It takes 4 to 6 hours, usually 8 hours. The record is 12 hours and usually 4 on the low end, 12 on the high end. It's a written test that they take 8 hours. Yeah. So it's like the bar exam, but for cooks. And then there's the extreme final you're talking about, the practical one where they cook all day. They start, midnight, 2 a.m. That we open the doors at 4. They are baking. They're creating croissants, biscuits, whatever. They put out a breakfast buffet. They get a random ingredient and a random technique for lunch. And then they do this 7-course dinner. They have to do the bar, to pair wines. They get the whole thing. They get a budget. They're doing this like literally in a couple of weeks, and they get a $200 budget for the entire day, including all the food and wine. So this is the tightest budget you could possibly imagine, right? We would have trouble just having dinner together and doing it for $200.
Have you
right?
adjusted it with inflation? Quick question. Has it gone up at all?
Yeah. So I creep it up. It was 140.
140. Okay.
Then 60, 180. Now it's 200.
Right, continue.
It may go to 220.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is a minuscule amount of money to do all that. So they have to know numbers inside and out. They have to be able to do all that food costing and everything that people, owners want them as a chef to be able to do. All that's being tested. They make desserts. They pair wines. They bartend. It's all in this test. So when I finished that description, they were like, okay, I move that we keep the word extreme, so because it is. And then remember when you called one of the deans of one of the schools and they said, why would you do that to somebody? Right. That's the whole plan of Paragon. Like, why would you do that? But the answer is, I want to know if they can really do it. It's a disservice if I'm graduating people that can't do it. And I love everybody, right? I do everything I can for everybody. But the problem is, we got to know if you can go out there. If Sean's going to say, hey, I need a chef and I'm going to send somebody over there to be the chef for Wobbly Olive or whatever, we need to know that this person can do that. Right.
Yeah. Right. So you're going to tie your name to them.
Yeah. So that's why. And we've had hundreds of graduates now. They've all done that 24-hour test. They've all done that crazy written. And, the only way to get that final piece of paper, which is the Grand Diploma de Cuisine from Paragon, the only degree of its kind in the world, the only way to get that is to go through all that.
And the funny thing too is like, we're not talking like they don't skimp on course 3 and give us like hamburger helper or something. Like most of them tell these stories and they make it about their childhood and they tell you things like, I don't remember his name. We had a guy somewhere from the South, but he made us that consomme with like Tabasco pearls. And that's what you were like mind blown. You're like, I haven't seen Tabasco pearls. Like,
yeah,
so doing like molecular
stuff. It was a
stuff.
Chitlin consomme.
That's right.
And it was spherified molecular gastronomy, spherified Tabasco pearls floating in this concept. And you're like, wait a minute, none of that makes any sense, right? But how cool is that? Chitlin, that's one whole universe. Consomme, that's another whole universe. Put those things together and then add molecular gastronomy on top of it, make it avant-garde and float these little Tabasco pearls in it, because you would put hot sauce with chitlins, right? Oh my gosh. This is like bomb diggity bomb right here. And this is the kind of stuff they think of. You know, I always joke around. I try to slow people down to let them learn more before they jump online and learn some crazy crap from online, right? So I try to reel them in. I'm like, before you go and learn to make all this crazy stuff, you know how to make a burger first or whatever. So I'm always talking about, you know, and what I say is kind of, I say, you know, we don't want this to be like levitating monkey nuts. Okay. We want this to be like, so I always joke around about levitating food. And then one of the seniors, who's the one getting a Michelin star right now, actually levitated something at the final.
What?
He got these special magnetic things. He's a very crafty guy.
Some like dry ice.
He actually levitated the plate. It was spinning and levitating above in midair. Because I talk about levitating food. I'm joking
around. That doesn't count against budget. That's like, okay, that's plateware.
Right. That was him doing something crazy.
All right.
So he levitated a dessert just to prove a point. Because I'm always like, don't make it some levitated, crazy, glow in the dark crap.
Where did he find the monkey nuts? I just need to know.
Yeah, no.
They're legal now.
Yeah, they're legal now. No, it's just like, the point is, don't go all the way out there and make your gelatinized David Chang, beautiful new age avant-garde pasta before you can make normal pasta that tastes good, right? So we're trying to do all the levels. We're trying to make sure that people can really cook it all. Yeah. And so, so I just joke around about levitating. Then he levitated something. That was pretty funny.
I'm going to trade you two favorite quick stories from my time judging that and my understanding of it from being there all day and watching it happen. But very quick, again, back to Bobby Couch, Green Line Grill. You guys love his burgers. I know it. You got to go Green Line Grill. But when Bobby was a student at Paragon, during his final, like close to the midway through his dinner, he was pulling like a sheet tray of potatoes out of the oven and was just moving fast and made a mistake. He pulled it out too fast. A bunch of hot oil splashed out and burned him bad, like real bad. And then I think you guys offered like, go to the hospital, you can finish later.
Of course.
And like his quote was like, no, fuck that, I'm finishing.
Yeah.
So he calls his military buddies. They roll up like screeching to a halt up front, run in, bandage him up.
Yeah, got him up on a table. It was like,
and finishes the night.
The whole battlefield emergency scenario.
Yeah, and then like goes to the ER later.
It was crazy to watch.
They were like real, like bad burns. Like yeah. So that's like the dedication on the student level when they're that committed to finishing. The next one is my favorite quote from your wife, Rihanna, which is how I ended that cover story back in the day. But like, wow, at the end of her night, she slumps down, just exhausted, and I think I just asked her, like, how was that? Or what do you think now that it's all over? And she said, she looks at me and she's like, I would rather give birth in a porta potty than do that again. Best quote ever.
Yeah, it is the best quote ever. And she's very familiar with both giving birth and porta potties. So yeah, she knows what she speaks. No, it is like that. Every year somebody cries. There's occasionally a stabbing, but basically it's all the way up. It's an 11, and that's what we do. That's what Paragon means, right? It's just all the way up, and that's what we do. We're doing it for 20 years.
So in terms of that, like Matt talked about, like years ago, you had to sort of move across town for the different meals for that, for the different courses. With being here at the Briarhurst, does that all happen just here now, or is
it changes. What happened mostly was COVID, because we had to reel that in. We can't just go gallivanting around town and go into other restaurants. So what we do is typically we make multiple areas so this is like 20,000 square feet. So we'll do an outside section in another whole part of the building, but I'm building Tava. So when that's open, we'll have probably lunch up there. And so we'll have the ability, we want to rotate, but they shut down parks, and they make it very difficult now to go into the parks and do the same thing that we used to do.
That's right.
So it's not exactly the same, but we do everything we can to rotate locations and just add more stress and more drama, because, getting up in the middle of doing a whole thing and then moving somewhere else, even if it's across the property, it's crazy, because you had everything set up over here. And so you might use this for a dinner, but have the breakfast in a buffet set up over there, but have lunch way over there by the creek or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's bite off one more thing since you mentioned it. And because again, this episode is going to go all over the place. Tava, you just mentioned it. So that's a future thing that's coming. And we're going to tell you a little bit about it now first. And of course I'll put it in the newsletter later, but what really quick is Tava? When's it happening?
Okay. So we've been working on this also for around 5 years. So Tava House, Tava, the original Native American name of the mountain, right? So Tava House is going to be the view of the mountain from Woodland Park.
Which mountain?
So which mountain?
Which mountain?
Cheyenne Mountain.
Cheyenne
You know,
Mountain.
we love the antennas.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, the antennas are sexy.
Mount Buckhorn.
You
Not
know?
Buckhorn. No, so Tava, so it's a 2-story facility. It's downtown Woodland. It's right where that little train station area is. The downstairs is a beautiful, huge patio looking at the mountain, and pour your own draft and wonderful bar food and all of that. Upstairs, fine dining steakhouse, sort of like the old Black Bear restaurant. So you got everything from an inexpensive steak all the way up to like 12-course extravaganzas, right? So it's going to kind of, it also contains a little banquet facility for people that want to have weddings up in the mountains. So we've been working on this for years and years. It's all kinds of trouble, of course, with Tava and with all the supply chain issues. It dragged its feet for a couple of years. We're now moving dirt right now. And we are leveling it out and doing all that currently. And we're almost completely ready to just build the thing. We're supposed to be open by May of 25, just within a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sweet.
And it's a big kitchen, so we can cross-reference some stuff involving Paragon there too.
Okay.
Right. So Paragon is kind of all over the place. I have an office across the street. I'm based here at the Briarhurst. We also are the only distillery in the world with the only culinary school in the world with an attached distillery. So we have approved distillery programs. You can learn how to be a distiller.
And to be clear, not attached to Briarhurst. It's actually at the old Black Bear in
That's
Green
the
Mountain
Black Bear.
Falls.
So Black Bear Distillery. So Paragon Culinary School at Briarhurst, Black Bear Distillery in Green Mountain Falls, and then there'll be a mountain campus eventually with Tava.
Okay.
And that'll also be connected to the high schools because we do a whole lot of work with high school culinary programs.
Okay. And I know Ryan's a local. Do you remember the Black Bear? Do you know the story of the Black
Oh,
Bear?
yeah. Yeah, we've been there.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people, if you've been in the Springs only recently, you may not remember. What was the last year of service there at regular restaurant service?
Yeah, 14.
2014,
So
okay.
we did 99 to 14. So we did 15 years. We did our 15th anniversary, March 17th of 14. And then the next day pulled everything out and start putting distillery stuff in.
Okay. Because when I first met you, I believe I was waiting tables at Cincha. That would have been like 2002-ish, 3-ish,
Yeah.
something like that.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young man.
Yeah, absolutely. Immediate connection. So I think Black Bear was still running then.
Mhm.
And I remember coming up for various things, but it was a different restaurant than just other restaurants too, because it was also doing like prefix created that
Mhm.
day. Name, like tell someone who doesn't know about that era, how was that a different part of
One of
Victor's
the
life?
fun, there's all these crazy stories, and there's like literally enough for 45 shows. But one of the funniest things is when Michelin came to Colorado last year, one of the places that got a Michelin star, they said one of the coolest things about it was it didn't really have a menu. So this was created basically at the Black Bear. So what this was the last few years, we didn't even have a menu. You came in and we talked to you about what you loved and if you had any allergies and stuff, and we just created. You 5-course minimum. The most courses we did was 24, but that takes 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that's a major undertaking. But every week we did 12. So 5, 7, 9, 12 courses. We just create. So it was just an endless creation. I think somebody wrote an article at one point in time about 30,000 original dishes or something. Like they were tracking it for a few years. That might have been, I don't even know if that was you.
It wasn't me.
Wasn't
I was
you?
too busy for
Somebody, yeah. Well, they didn't have all 30,000, but they did the math of what they followed us for a few weeks and watched what we created every night because it was a new soup, new salads all the time. And they calculated something like 30,000 original dishes. But we just basically made artistic, beautiful, wonderful things all night. And that piece will be in Tava. It'll be like Black Bear 2.0 in a way. But back then, when I first got here, I'm coming from a 5-star, 5-diamond style background. And that's what, how I got all the Master Chef and World Chef titles come from that background. Last place before this was the flagship of the Omni in Houston. La Reserve restaurant was like a 5-star restaurant. We were number 1 Zagat restaurant in Houston. And I wanted to get my own place. So that's when I got the Black Bear. This is way back in 99 and 2000. A mentor of mine named Anton Mosseman, who's the first person to get 2 Michelin stars outside of France. He's a French-trained Swiss chef that was based in England. He's one of the cores of the English Revolution that gave us, Gordon Ramsay and stuff like that, right? And Heston Blumenthal and all that. So Anton Mosseman was the core, but the way he did that in London in the 70s was to create a thing called Club 9. And he counted all the chefs that were doing really like hardcore stuff that were really elevating the cuisine. And there were 9 of them. And he got them together as a club. Well, I got here and I thought about that. So I counted them, and there were 9 of us, right?
Who was it? It was James, Brent.
Yeah.
Jay,
How do we even count them all? So Paul Jensen was the Penrose Room chef. And then there was Brent, and there was Chris Adrian, right? And then there was Chip Johnson, of course. And there was these amazing chefs. And so I thought, well, there's 9. That's too much of a coincidence, right? So I sent this invitation out and invited them all up to the Bear. We had our first meeting in the bar of the Bear and had a blast. And of course, as Brent used to say, it was basically an excuse to drink. And it was, I'll be honest with you, it was just fun. Chefs hang out and blow off some steam, and people would make food and bring food. It was awesome. And it lasted a while, and that ended up turning into some other really cool stuff, it kind of like winded down. A lot of chefs left, John Broning, remember him?
Yeah.
From Primitivo. That's you'd have to be an old school foodie around here to know that name. He went to Denver. I mean, everybody left, Paul Jensen left. So it just kind of faded out, but Brent kept it going, and the spirit of it, and created the whole thing with Vittles and Vino and all that stuff. I mean, all that cool stuff that those guys did. And that brings us all the way full circle back to Sapanza, who's a total awesome chick that I love to death. She even teaches some at Paragon. And you have several things you do with her. I see her quite a bit on your stuff.
Yeah, we just did a recipe with her last.
She's the coolest, man.
month.
She's the absolute. She's the one. She really is. So, but she's here quite often. She'll do Thai and Korean classes and stuff here for Paragon. But that because she did that whole thing with the vest for the guys. So this is a full circle thing. And so that's back in the day, just everybody trying to help each other, trying to build something, because Colorado Springs was kind of fragmented and weird. It's a weird town. It's full of amazing foodies and a whole lot of people that have no idea, that we got this 2,000 chain restaurants. It's a very confusing environment. You go down Powers or Academy, you're like, oh, there must be a couple hundred chefs out here. There's not any. There's like 2, right? It's a very difficult world to try to figure out. And we're just trying to navigate that and help each other out. Those guys are they're rock stars. All of them were just so amazing. And I was so blessed to have those guys in my life in the early days and build up Chip built the Briarhurst, and then, over there, they built up the warehouse, and James Africano. I mean, come on, that dude is awesome. These guys are just awesome. And I was building the Blackberry, and we're just trying to make a culinary scene. And
where do
you got caught in the middle.
I asked these guys the question on my other State of Plate podcast a few years ago. I had Jay and Brent and James on, and I asked them, I'm like, what you guys were doing 20 years ago with Club 9 and where you were trying to take the scene. Well, here we are. What do you think? Did it work? Like, where are we at? So it's a tough question, but looking back yourself at today's landscape you're just describing, and then go back to your Club 9 foundational brain. What do you think? Did it?
Well, a lot of awesome new guys. I mean, when I first met Jay, he was barely cooking it when I first met him. That's almost 25 years ago. And now he's one of the best chefs this state's ever seen, right? New guys on the scene. And I call him new now. He's probably getting old, but people like Brother Luck, right? So we had a rise of awesome new talent. We had plenty of cool restaurants, and now they're opening all kinds of. I can't even keep up anymore. All the crazy cool new stuff opening out east and up north and all of that. So it definitely had a positive impact overall. It definitely provided, all those chefs basically provided a kind of a jump start to a real good culinary scene, and we owe them all just such a debt of gratitude, right? But it was just this beautiful beginning. I think that it didn't go all the way. I think that the town is still weird, and it's got a lot of awesome people that really get it, and then it's got a lot of people that just really don't really. I think in general, the America is in general a bit fragmented and a bit separated, and we need more unity and love. Obviously, I think that's similar to Colorado Springs, sort of a microcosm of that. It's pretty fragmented, and you got a lot of people that are just diehard, chain fans, and a lot of guys. But you got a lot of people out there doing everything in their power to support local. And we got a major local scene, whether it's beer, distilleries, food. There's a major local scene. And of course, the rise of the food truck, and we got all kinds of crazy. But every time you put something out about somebody closing, it breaks my heart, man.
Yeah.
We've lost so many amazing, this post-COVID thing, man, F this whole thing, to be honest with you. It has been such a nightmare for so many businesses trying to survive. And I mean, you got an endless array of problems. You got problems with employees, getting the right people. Everybody wants to pay everybody right, but if you go too far in that direction, you don't have a margin. The restaurant margins are so tight.
Well,
it's just
stuff
hard.
I hear from the chefs is when pay got better for competition or other reasons, the talent isn't up at the level of what they're asking for. It's coming in at a starting line cook, they're expecting too much for what they know, and it kind of tipped the scale of like, well, wait a minute, these jobs are usually worth about this, and you got to learn some more first, and then you get this job. But everything just sort of seemed a little bit wonky from what I'm hearing.
It is. I mean, and everybody wants a line cook to make $20+ right? Everybody. We want them to have a wonderful life and a good family and everything. But what we're doing is kind of like skipping things. We're talking about the internet and how sometimes my students will skip over like how to do the burger, and now they're making, the levitating tartare or whatever, right? So it's like the world is weird, but it's weird because we used to have a scale, and you had to climb. And I mean, and even people not as old as me, I mean, I'm obviously ancient, and I mean, I went through the whole classical last 600 years of the way it's worked for chefs, with all the crazy. And you got to get rid of some of the crazy. I mean, we don't need as many beatings and stabbings as we had when I was coming up in the 80s and 90s. Obviously, that's crazy. So you got to change some of it, but you end up with a lot of folks that are kind of trying to jump to making the good money and having a lot of control over their lives and having work and life work balance. And all these things didn't exist in the kitchen originally. So it's very hard to orchestrate the numbers the way you need to if you're paying people really well, which you want to do, but you're also having to source high quality products because you want to do that, but you also have to make the facility nice, and you want to do that. I mean, at this point, there's nothing left. If you saw the numbers graphed out of the margins, 6 to 8% national average, 10% profit margin if you're awesome, right? I mean, you eliminate that almost immediately. If you go $15 an hour to $20 an hour, what's that percentage?
Well, it's like a knife. Right? It's always been
20, 30%,
but it seems worse and just razor edge now. Like making it as a business is really, really hard in the industry right now. What do you tell your students about that? How do you prep them for that? Like you've got them through their, bar inspired written exam. You've got them through their 24-hour intensive. Now you're about to send them out into that cutthroat world.
Man, what a great question. My response is to make them worth it. So that was my response. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hit it from the other end rather than complain about all these high prices that everybody's getting paid. And that's how hard it is to do the budget. Let me just make them worth it. So for instance, upstairs at Tava, my plan is a small, very elite crew. So the way I would summarize the world is you've got, big giant schools and stuff. You got a lot of stuff that's like the infantry, and we're like special forces, right? I want to get a small number of people that are incredibly talented and highly trained, and they can do the work of multiple people because this is what they do. I don't know how many people I'm doing the work of currently, but it's more than one or two, right? But it doesn't make me feel bad. It makes me proud of myself. It makes me feel good about it's my passion to do that, right? So I think that when they're worth it. But you got somebody off the street that's worked for, 5 minutes at a Denny's and now he wants $20 an hour. That's hard. That is hard, man. That is hard. But you got somebody worth it that's going to get in there and hammer it out and make this beautiful food that's delicious and perfect. And it's going to be safe and that's totally fine. So you just have to adjust it. But it's kind of this endless circle of pain because now you got to raise your menu prices, right? So it's like this, but then everybody's complaining about how expensive the menu is. Like, it's this endless circle of pain. We want to do everything the right way. And every owner that I know wants to pay everybody well and give them as much as they possibly can because we value them so highly. But it's hard to do all that and also get good bread. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard. It's nothing is cheap anymore. Everything's expensive. But I figured, okay, I'm just going to train them so hard that they're just going to be worth it. and they're going to go out and get it. So I tell them, you're going to make money and you're going to be worth a lot because you can do all these different skill sets. Because we train in everything, right? We train bar, wine, management, cooking, pastry, everything. So they can cook, they can make a wedding cake, they can work the line, they can work the grill, they can tend bar. So they're worth a lot. And that's my response, to just make them worth it, because they're killer. My students are like, they're killer.
In terms of the, just thinking back to like the extreme exam that you have for the final, and you're making these graduates worth it. How often does someone not graduate?
So we don't have a lot of, people are figuring that out. So the editing system that we're in is pretty extreme. So when you first come to apply for Paragon, I give you the spiel and kind of make it clear, or one of the ladies from the office makes it clear what you're getting into. So people that don't really care about it and they just want to have some fun, and not typical students. Then we get the serious people. And then we go through, 4 trimesters, and each trimester gets harder. So they're getting hammered away at, and eventually that, people that aren't serious are going to drop out,
So you weed them out before.
Yeah.
You get to that
point. And some people just, now that's not always bad, because some people are like, I just want to learn how to do this, but I don't plan on having my own restaurant. And that's totally fine. We get plenty of folks like that. But the average person wants their own restaurant or wants to be a great master chef or whatever, but they get kind of weeded out eventually, but also you have options at the end. If you want to get all the paperwork, but not the final piece, and don't do the final, you can take all the classes, and all the classes are individually, excuse me, all the classes are individually certified as well. So you get a pile of paperwork, not just a piece of paper. You get a pile of paperwork. That was a response to the whole world, how chefs are getting people in with a piece of paper that can't really do much. So this is telling you, this pile is telling you this person's serious. They can get some stuff done. So we have all that. We have that big, that response, but basically you don't have to do everything. If you have like a problem or a reason that maybe, that's not going to work out for you, maybe that's okay. We're not mad at you. You can come take just baking, or you can, take all the classes up to the end. But like, I'm not really down for that total madness, right? That's going to unfail. And, whatever, that's totally fine. But so you get to that point and you're going to do it. And the people that are going to do it are the ones that want to do it, that are ready to do it. And they're going to go ham. So we've had, over 200 people that have done all that. And just, there's been higher level and lower level stuff, but it's always proving that they can really do it. And so they graduate. If you were to do all of that and fail miserably, which does happen, but very, very rarely.
That's what I was asking about. Those ones, the people that made it to the end, but then something. So
the rule for Paragon, and the Board of Education asked me this as well. They said, what happens if somebody fails? And I'm like what? Like, we're trying to make homemade pasta and they can't do it. And they're like, yeah, what do you do with they were asking about disciplinary policies, right? And I'm like, here's what we do. If they can't make pasta, we keep making pasta until they can, right? So this is my response. Let's say they can't ever do it. Normally they don't go through a couple years of training and just not be able to cook. Now, I did have one guy, I've had a few people that I've had to let go over the years. Usually that's a negative thing, like theft or something like that. It's very rare, but because you got to have a moral code to do this. Someone's going to hand you the keys and a bag of money to run their place. You got to have a moral code, right? So, but I did have a guy, and bless his heart, he tried so hard. He just could not cook. And he tried, and he loved it. And he came to class on time every day, and he loved it. But he just didn't get it. He just could not do it. Eventually I had to sit down with him, and I said, hey, look, this is the final for advanced baking and pastry. Most people are doing sugar and chocolate work, and you made a big cookie. And not only did you make a big cookie, but it wasn't fully cooked. And so I got questions about your cooking abilities. And I think that you've tried this the second time you took the class. I think maybe we need to look at other careers for you. What do you like to do? He's like, well, I'm a security guy. I'm like, I should maybe find you an investor, get you a security company, maybe get your own security. And he has his own security company now. So if you just can't cook, but usually don't make it that far and you just can't do it, but he just would not surrender, I loved it. That's why I helped him do other things, because I'm like, this guy's awesome. He just can't really cook.
Well, those unbaked cookies, he could have gone and worked at a crumble. Like those are just
see.
these big, thick, gooey, unbaked cookies.
I wish I would have
They're
thought
super
about
popular.
That might not have existed.
Going to
back
corporate
then.
No,
It's a long time ago.
I want to jump back in the timeline again. You referenced a little bit of it, but let's start. And this is a 40 episode answer, but condense this answer down to who is Victor? How did you start? How did you come up? I know you trained with a bunch of chefs to get your titles and where you've gotten. So give us Victor's path to
in a
Paragon and
nutshell.
beyond, and there's the short
Wow.
version,
Yeah.
other than like the distilling family. We'll come back to the distillery as well, but
So cooking. So 14-ish. Back then, if you were 15 by tax time, you could get a job, right?
and you were living where at the time?
And I mean, this is Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
My family is in the mountains. My family has moved me. You know all those movies and novels about how the blue collar family's working really hard to give the kid a better life. In this story, I'm the kid, right? So they're in the mountains, they're in the holler, they're doing all this stuff. But my mom and stepdad are trying to figure out a way out. And we end up in Raleigh. So we went to a big city. A lot of drama unfolded there. I was a serious hillbilly at that time. It was very difficult to get by. First girl I ever asked out, her name was Keisha Bunn. I don't know if she's still alive or not, probably, but she might hear this. That'd be so cool. Anyway, Keisha Bunn, I asked her out. She said, hell no, right? She screamed at me in the middle of the quad because I was this hillbilly, man. My voice was horrible. So that's why I got dedicated so much to education. My first degree was English, right? But my mom's single at this point in time and when I'm 14-ish. And we are at this neighborhood Italian restaurant. And the GM is a single, tall, dark, handsome guy. He's making moves on my mom. So I don't know. Maybe we should not publish that. Maybe we could. She'll love it. She's like 80 now, so she'll love it.
Darlene's
Okay.
awesome. She's
Yeah.
part of the school.
She
still.
is. She's my
Yeah.
administrator. She's my
Yeah.
bookkeeper. She's been bookkeeping now for over 50 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's the young 30-something mom with the blonde hair back then. And he's hitting on her. So he sits down and he's sitting on my mom, and I'm sitting there trying to eat my pizza, right? And my mom's like, they're making conversation. He's like, he needs a job. I'm like, no, I'm 14. I don't need a job. And she's like, yeah, you definitely need a job. So I started there as
Your mom's wingman, essentially.
basically. No, that didn't go further than that night, but I did get a job dishwashing at this local Italian joint. And now I'm back there in the back busting out suds. It was horrible, man. We had this Wednesday night was lasagna night, and I'm chiseling. It was like these metal lasagna containers that get baked on, and I'm back there with a chisel. It was like horrifying. So I went to the chef and I said, how do I get up front? And he said, basically, you got to prove to me you're the greatest dishwasher that ever lived. So I did, and I became the greatest dishwasher ever. And but I was like I said, almost 14, almost 15. So up there in the front, there was this much older, wiser, sexy kid. He was 16. And this guy was tossing the pizzas. So all the girls talked to him. So I'm like, I got to get up to the front. I got to get in the pizza tossing department, right? So I worked my way up. And by the time I was 16, I was tossing the pizzas in the front. And then I had this big crush on a couple of the girls that were there, but they were like in their 20s. They were beautiful. And I'm like, like I said, I'm 16 years old. So I got my first car, but it was a total beater piece of crap. So one of the girls' boyfriends stood her up one night and I made my move. I'm like, I'll take you home. She's like, not in this piece of crap. So now I got to get a better car. So I got to work harder. So now I'm working 2 cooking jobs. So I went and opened up a Carl's Jr. It was called Hardee's back then. So I opened up a Hardee's. So I'm in a pizza place and the burger place and high school and doing all my high school classes, AP, GT, 4.0, that kind of stuff. I was a super dork. I loved school, hung out in the teacher's lounge and all that stuff. Shout out to Dr. Sally Humble, who's still alive. She was the head of the whole English department at my high school. And she's just this rock star, very scary, really small lady. But anyway, she was like the Tyrion Lannister of the English department. Anyway, she was a genius. She was the coolest chick in the whole world. And she guided me along. She had to make a class up one time for me because I did them all. So I'm doing all that and working 2 jobs, right? And so that's my modus operandi my entire life. The way I do it is I just work. I mean, I've always been that guy. Like when I was younger than that, I had a paper route. And then another kid got sick and I got his paper. I had 2 paper routes. I'm getting up like 5 a.m. and then I'm going an hour on a bus to school. First thing I ever did was trap mice in the barn and sell them as pets until the mother started calling my mother, like, is your kid selling barn mice for $20? I'm like, and so that didn't work out. So then I found out that at the back of the elementary class, the crayons were free, and we had like a heater. So I started melting crayons and making figurines and selling those like superhero figurines. So I've been a serial entrepreneur my entire life since like 7 years old.
To a T, sounds like it.
So anyway, so I started in those restaurants. I made it to a place. It was a brand new restaurant in Raleigh called Crossroads, and this had chefs that they brought in. There was a place back then in North Carolina called Daryl's, and it was like a steak and ale type of deal, like a nicer chain, but a nicer one kind of a thing, like a Sullivan's kind of, or whatever, right? So the GM came over to this new restaurant called Crossroads, and they got 2 chefs, one from DC and one from New York. And these chefs, which are long gone, I mean, years ago, but these guys were my first mentors as a chef. Now, back then in the 80s, nobody had ever heard the word chef. So as when I graduated high school, I put down chef is what I wanted to do. You put down like I'm going to this school or joining the army or whatever. Nobody, 1,000 people in my high school, nobody knew the word chef.
What are they here? Just cook? Line cook?
Yeah, they thought I meant chief, like the guy with the striped hat that runs a train. I wish I was joking.
So you're just saying American culture literally just didn't understand what a chef was, like
no,
French cuisine.
You would not understand a chef at all in North Carolina in the 80s. You would not even have ever heard that word. The only people who heard that word were either rich people that went to nice restaurants or people that had people in restaurants. The word chef was brand new. You got to remember that we had only one kind of fine dining restaurant in the 60s and 70s, and it was fine dining was French. Everything was French. No American fine dining yet. No Italian. Northern Italian didn't come to the mid 70s. Nobody knew anything about Italian wine until the 90s. Like all that stuff is the end of the 20th century. So the idea of being a chef, nobody had ever heard of in North Carolina. Now, if I was in New York City, sure. I'm sure somebody in New York City in 86 knew what that was.
Yeah,
but
it sounds like more the microcosm of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Itself.
But not many places in America would have even known that word. So anyway, these guys told me, you got to get out of here. And they gave me a choice of 4 places. They said, you can either go to New York City or San Francisco or Chicago or New Orleans. Those are the 4 food capitals of America. And you got to pick one. So I said, okay. I was raised in the South, so I'm raised to hate California, so I can't go there. Later on, fell in love with Northern California, especially San Francisco and the wine country. But back then, oh my gosh, that was like, that's the devil out there. I mean, you can't go out there to California. New York City just seemed way too big to me. Like it seemed like a problem. Like I would get lost and eaten up. And I did work there later, and it is true. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. It's real. New York City is no joke. Chicago, I didn't really have an attraction for some reason. Are we thinking about trying to kill him?
I was going to try to.
I got my
Sorry.
rag.
I know.
Next time I'll use my rag. Okay. So anyway, I thought New Orleans. So first of all, I was an Anne Rice fan. So I liked the vampire stories and all that kind of fantasy, science fiction stuff, all that kind of stuff I loved. So New Orleans, and also like jazz. I did a little music. I've always been a serial artist, all kinds of different art. I really am bad at almost all of it, but I do my best. Like I'll paint, I'll draw. I'm good at writing, I guess. But when it comes to guitar, I tried so hard to be a guitar rock star, and I sucked so bad at guitar. I played a little bass though. So I thought, okay, I like jazz. I liked music. So I went to New Orleans after graduation, and after all that stuff with those guys, I headed down to New Orleans, and I spent my 20s. I turned 21 years old on Bourbon Street. So my first stop was a place called Broussard's. It's like a 100-year-old restaurant, master chef named of Broussard's. Well, my first stop was Arno's, which is another 100-year-old restaurant. I got in the back door there and started working my way. That place was so big, they had 3 levels of prep cook, 3 levels. So I became the lead prep cook, and it was like actually a multiple year journey to become lead prep cook. But it was a long story. The long story short version is I went to work for several masters, a British, a French, a German, and an Italian master.
All in New Orleans. But they were all from other places bringing very serious power. We're talking about
The German chef had 9 stars, a 5-star and a 4-star. He was the most highly rated chef in the history of New Orleans. He was on the very first season of Great Chefs, which is the very first real TV show about chefs from Discovery Channel in the 80s. He was on the first season.
What's his name?
The Gunter Preuss. Chef Preuss is retired for a while now, but they had a restaurant called Broussard's. He was one of my mentors. Andrea Puzzo. Andrea was the chef who led the sort of Northern Italian Revolution, brought everybody from Italy. He's the reason that we know risotto and tiramisu and all those things. So these are heavy hitters. The British guy was like a friend of Gordon Ramsay. He was like much meaner. Gordon Ramsay's a sweetheart. This guy was the mean version.
The guy you told me about, like the
unbelievable, man. It was the real Hell's Kitchen that I went through. The British guys were the craziest. It was very Marco Pierre White time frame, and they were the craziest of all of them. French guy was real chill. He had been the head chef of the King of Sweden, and he opened up a place called Santa Fe where he basically just had like French master chef versions of Mexican food. I know it sounds crazy, but imagine enchiladas that the sauce is made from demi, and the roasted chicken and the enchilada is done the classical French way where you rub it down with herbs and you roast the chicken and then you pull it and make an enchilada. Just imagine the level of food that was. It was like the first time I've ever seen anything that crazy and delicious. But those are my masters. They kind of traded me around.
And did you intentionally do your own, like, I'm going to do 2 years with each guy and learn a thing? Or did you got passed around as they released you and said, hey, you're done here, go there? Or...
I wish I was that smart. Oh, that would have been awesome. No, I was not that smart. Here's what I did do. I'm sitting around early 20s. I'm working my butt off, and I'm thinking to myself, I want to be a master chef, right? I want to be one of the big boys. But how am I going to get there? Because they're all 60-something, right? I need to do that earlier so I can enjoy it. How? So it was like a math equation, right? You know, so I've been one of those kind of like education and IQ type guys. And I had this like thing going on. It's like computerizing thing happening. I'm like, okay, how do I do this? All I need to do is double up. I need to put my 30s into my 20s. If I put my 30s into my 20s, then by the time I'm 30, I'm actually 40 something, right? So my math. So what I did was I doubled down. So 40 to 50 hour week, 50 hour a week, full-time chef jobs. I just did 2. I just did my entire 20s, 100, 110 hours a week. And I did 2. So I did the French guy all the time, full time, and the German guy all the time, full time. So those guys noticed that. And I guess they thought I had talent or whatever it was, paperwork error or whatever. But they started passing me around. Like, you need to go over here to learn about risotto and homemade pasta with Andrea. And you need to go over here and learn about this. And then I ended up, Windsor Court was a big deal. It was a 5-star facility. It was the coolest thing that ever happened. And the head chef was named Kevin Graham. And Kevin had some issues. I don't know if he's even out there now, but at that time he was the number 1 chef basically in New Orleans. This was like pre-Emerald. Emerald had just opened up Emerald's. He came from Commander's Palace, opened up Emerald's. This was all like him just starting to become famous, right? He's writing his first book. And when Emerald had his first book out, I was his opening act. We toured around and he did stuff from his book, and I did flavored oils and vinegars. Anyway, this guy was running the Windsor Court and it opened up Graham's, and this was the number 1 restaurant at the time. And I was PM saute. And after that, it was sous chef time. In the meantime, I also went out to Lake Charles and opened up a casino. They had the first casino in Lake Charles opened up. It's called Players Island. And I was one of the head chefs there. And then I came back and opened up my first culinary school, which I wasn't an owner of. I was just a worker, but we had a restaurant called the Chef's Table. And we had a culinary school called the Culinary Institute of New Orleans. And so I got experienced in all of that stuff, but as a worker, not an owner. So later on, I would double down and triple down on all that and open up, you do chef tables at the restaurant Black Bear and also open up Paragon. I got here because I wanted my own thing. My last stop was the Omni in Houston, and my best friend, Dwayne, was the pastry chef, and the chef had left and taken everybody with him. So it was an emergency situation. So I got in there and kind of took over that and really helped that. Amazing chef named Gary Eaton was my kind of friend and partner there. And he was also another mentor. It was just amazing. But anyway, after all that, I'm like, okay, now it's time to get my own place. And that's how I ended up at the Black Bear.
How'd you choose it?
How'd you find Colorado?
The previous owner, I'd never been to Colorado before at the time. Never been to Colorado. Here's what I knew. I knew I was tired of the South. I've been in the South my whole life, sweating my butt off, right? So you lay in your bed in your skivvies and you lay there still and you're sweating. And you get in the shower and you're sweating because you're moving too much, washing yourself, making yourself sweat. I was done with that. I was in Houston. It got so hot one day that I walked out and all the windows of my car had just broken from the heat. Just all the windows just broke. All right, this is ridiculous. This is too much. So I'm looking online. Internet was relatively.
Did you have a
new.
Nicer car by then, or were you still getting like shaded on all
No,
your date
no.
offers?
I
you were driving the
upgraded
beater.
cars. I upgraded the cars right away. Okay.
Okay.
So by the time I was 17, I had this like a 36-year-old girlfriend. But anyway, but what I got upgraded. My mom had a boyfriend whose relatives had like a car dealership. Anyway, the point is they knew about sports cars. So she had a friend of a friend that had a sports car thing. So anyway, the long story short of all that was I ended up with a convertible Triumph Spitfire that replaced my Datsun 210 piece of crap that she didn't want to get in. And then she wanted to get in.
Nice.
Yeah.
All
It was a yellow convertible sports car. But in Houston, I was driving a Del Sol, right? So, I mean, it was Italian restaurant. I had like nicer clothes and I was like one of those like stud boys or whatever, right? Whatever, man. So anyway, I was working all the time too hard anyways. But then the point is that when I came here, this is the funny part. It was a Del Sol, not a Del Snow. Okay. So when I got here, I hit the first winter and I was driving this car. And I mean, I was sliding through people's yards and smashing into fences. And I'm like, I got to get a truck like today. And ever since then, I've had a 4-wheel drive truck. But so, yeah, I had a nicer car back when I first came here, but it was the wrong car for the mountains of Colorado.
All right.
But yeah, so
you
I
picked
ended
it
up,
because it was cold. Not
so
hot.
I wanted my own place. And so the owner's wife, the owner before me, I'm the longest owner ever by far. The longest owner before me was 5 years. And I've had it over 20, almost 25. So I bought it in 2000, the land, the whole thing in 2000. But the long story short was the owner's wife was an MCI manager. So MCI was like this company, like pre-Sprint company. Anyway, the internet was pretty new, but it existed. And I was on it occasionally, and she had posted it. So I found it from Houston. I was at an Irish pub around Christmas time, and it was just cool enough and rainy enough that I could relax for a minute. And I was checking out all these things online beforehand. I took the number with me to the pub, and I went out and used a payphone. For your listeners, payphones used to be these things we had where you put a coin in. Okay, so coins are these little round things made of metal. No, I'm just kidding. I joke with my students all the time. I'll say stuff like, so I had a VCR tape, and I just look. They're like,
Blank.
no idea what you're talking about right now. Anyway.
Yeah, if you guys need me, just page me. I'll have my beeper on.
Yeah. You get paged. So so what I did was I called the number and came and met with the guy, and I just fell in love. So it's snowy up here. It's the pass, it's Green Mountain Falls. It's got the big fireplace.
Picturesque in the wintertime, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I just immediately fell in love with the whole Colorado Springs Ute Pass area, like immediately. That was wintertime, Christmas time of 99. So then I went back and I put my notice in because we already fixed the whole problem at the hotel. And so I hired my replacement, 2 Michelin star Irish chef. I always have, being Irish, I always have like a penchant for hiring Irish guys. But most of the places I've been have been around the 2 Michelin star level, pretty much, the teams and the crews. And most of the time, the chef I replaced or got replaced by is around 2 Michelin stars. So I got this Irish 2 Michelin star chef that came in to take over the Omni and La Reserve and all that. And then I was free. So I put my notice in. It was probably a month notice. And then I came out in January and February, and I started rebuilding the Blackberry. The restaurant part was closed. The bar was open, specializing in like green chili burritos. Had to learn what green chili was. You guys, I didn't know what green chili was. Where I come from, it's red. Right? Mm-hmm. There was no green chili anywhere in my life. It wasn't gumbo, right? It was green chili. And I'm like, what the heck is green chili? Oh man. The first one I made, I didn't know how to make it. So I made it all green chilies, like all hot green chilies. This thing would destroy, your face would melt, right? So I'm like, well, obviously I missed something because it's not all green chilies or else your face would melt off. So And I had to go figure it out. We didn't have like the Google thing yet, right? So I'm like talking to people. Eventually I got some information. I think those guys were at, you remember the crazy old place that was right near a warehouse that went downtown and got the corner that's over there by the park now? Breakfast place, super famous.
King Chef.
Yeah. I think it was those guys that told me what green chili was, and they know, right?
Yeah. So like, Victor, have you tried putting pork in it yet? You're like, pork? What?
You know, I did.
idea.
It was pork and green chilies and onions, and that was it. So then I figured out, okay, I'm going to need more stuff. I'm going to need some non-spicy chilies. I'm going to need some really great stock. I'm going to need a lot of pork. Now, then after 2 or 3 times, I got some really good pork green chili together. And my pork green chili is pretty awesome now. It has been for 20 years. But when I first got here, I never heard of green chili.
All right. So now we've just put you at the Bear, which is a great segue to the distillery, because everything we've just talked about, all these wild food stories, and this interesting, rich history, there's an equally interesting 10-year history now on the distillery side. So it's not just spirits like you're used to seeing. Like you said, we were making them with local Colorado grain and all that. And that's fine. A lot of people have done grain to glass and they have that local mindset. But you're taking it even a further direction with the things you're doing, these touches you have on each spirit. So we're not doing a tasting right now. We might do that a little bit later, but
you got to come up to the tasting. We have a beautiful tasting room up there.
Just give us a short sort of like mission statement for what you do at the distillery
and the awards.
Yeah. So,
there's
well, thank you.
There's awards.
There's awards.
We won a couple things. Yeah.
Oh,
33 medals now, set like 9 or 10 gold medals, 2 national championships. Yeah, we won a lot of awards. And you know what it is? You know what it is? It's because it's chefs. So I'm not trying to be like pro chefy guy, but I pretty much, that's my life. But I think it's the fact that it's the only distillery run by chefs. So my right-hand man, Bobby, is also a chef. He's been with me over a decade, probably 12 years. He was a graduate of Paragon. And the bartender is another graduate of Paragon, another chef. You know, even my wife, like everybody involved, even my kids, they're all like chefs. They're all interwoven into this like chef world. So what that does is drive the palate. So instead of making like a spirit like you would normally make a spirit, let's just make a good spirit. It's not that. It's like, okay, what are we going to do that's more intense than that? It's kind of like making a pork chop. Instead of making a normal pork chop as a chef, you make a sexy new version of a pork chop. You make a pork chop that's better. How can I do that? Can I brine it? Can I stuff it with green chilies and mozzarella? What can I do to this pork chop? And that's what we do with the liquor. We think like chefs with the liquor. So our motto at the Black Bear, first of all, let me go back to how we got there. So we had the restaurant. The restaurant's going great. We're killing it. Like the first place outside of Denver to get 4 stars from the Denver Post. Like it's a big deal. We won every award there was at the restaurant, 24 medals at the restaurant. Like it was this amazing place. But Waldo Canyon shut it down, the floods and everything. People couldn't get there. So we pivot and we put the paperwork in at 13. So remember, Waldo Canyon was 2012. We lost that summer. I figured we're getting it back the next summer, 2013, but then it's floods. So fall after the summer of 2013, when I realized we were deeply screwed, right? After that, I said, okay, put the paperwork in. We're founded in 13 with the federal government. 14, we have our final restaurant anniversary on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, because like I said, I'm Irish. We opened on March 17th of 99, right? So now we really owned the place by 2000. So, okay, we had 15 years of Black Bear restaurant. We shifted gears, and that was 14, and this is 24. So 10-year anniversary. So we're on the 20-year anniversary for the school and the 10-year anniversary for the distillery, and it's the beginning of TABA. So evidently I do things every 10 years, evidently. That's how it works out, I guess. But anyway, the motto or the slogan for Black Bear Distillery is tradition and innovation. So everything that we're doing has a deep history that we really deeply understand. We teach classes in the history of spirits, history of cocktails. So our dive level on that stuff is way past normal. So we're like crazy PhD level cocktail information type place. So all the history of those spirits and all the background and all the traditions go into this new innovation. So for instance, the very first thing we made was my grandfather's moonshine recipe. Now this required 2 years just to dial in the still, because we're trying to do something that was done in the mountains of North Carolina, in the woods, with a firebox from an old tin trash can. And now we're trying to do that in Colorado at, 8,000 feet with steam and modern technology and safety precautions and stuff like crazy.
Don't forget the
stuff
donkeys.
like
You're still trying to do it
Still
with the donkeys. And-
Yeah. I was always doing crazy. That's my thing.
all right, but back to it. Sorry about
crazy.
that.
No, I'm built for crazy. No, you're exactly right. That would be a good summary. But no, so then we take that and then we go, okay, then we discover that my grandfather's grandfather recipe didn't have any barley. So now we got to figure out rye. So now we're in Alamosa working on like malting rye with the Colorado Malting Company. They figured out rye malting. Now we're doing our first run. This is an 1889 recipe. We're doing this recipe like 1889. We're boiling water, dumping it on grain pot. Somewhere online, there's a video of Bobby with paddling, and I'm back in the background singing "Row, row, row your boat." Like we did everything like you would do in the 1880s. Nothing modern. Then we tweaked that, and we end up with this rye, like the smoothest thing ever. And it's rye, but the government won't give me a permit. They're like, there's no such thing as a clear rye. I'm like, I'm literally drinking it. Okay. You need to talk to George Washington because he made clear rye too. None of the stuff was brown or golden until the 1800s. We're making the first American whiskey is clear rye. That's the first American whiskey. Then that's why they use rye in bourbon, because when they went over into the frontier, which was Kentucky and Tennessee, they wanted to keep a little of that rye flavor from the original American whiskey. That's why you've got the barley that fuels the process through the amylase enzyme, and you've got corn as your main ingredient, but then you got that little rye in your bourbon. That's because they wanted to keep that rye flavor. So clear rye was the first American whiskey, and I'm literally making it, but they don't have permit. They're like, you can't have a clear rye. The only whiskey, this is government's talking, the only whiskey that can be clear is corn whiskey, like a moonshine. I said, this is like a moonshine. It's just rye based, and we had to, do all this crazy stuff to recover this recipe. They won't give it to me. So they said, we need you to send us a sample. We'll figure it out. Send a sample. They said, it's vodka. I said, it's not vodka. Okay. Well, nobody's Polish or Russian. There's no vodka in it. They're like, yeah, but the government does things based on like reality in a way. It's like whatever it looks like and smells like and tastes like, that's what you got to call it. And since it's so smooth and it's clear, it's a rye vodka. So that's our vodka. So our vodka's not really vodka. We have a moonshine that people don't understand because it's so good and they think moonshine's supposed to be awful. Then we make rum. One day the truck, I literally get my grain in a pickup truck. The guy comes in a pickup truck and drops the grain off, right, from the farms. And we get this, the guy calls me and says, we can't bring anything for a week or two. The truck broke down. It's going to be like 10 days. I'm like, we got to make something else. So let's make some rum. Sent Bobby to Costco to clear it out. We got all the sugar from Costco, which is a lot of sugar, mostly the brown sugar and molasses. We made rum, right? So this rum that we made was, I thought if it's awful, I'll just mix it with fruit juice and drink it. It'll be fine. We'll watch the game or whatever. But it was actually like really, really, really good rum. So then put some in a barrel. I used a bourbon barrel that I had and aged it. It was delicious. I sent it to New York to a blind tasting of rums. Got a 94 point gold medal. They called me and they said, what part of Jamaica is Green Mountain Falls? They were confused with Blue Mountain, Green Mountain, Blue Mountain, right? Blue Mountain coffee and everything. There's Blue Mountain, Jamaica. So they thought that Green Mountain Falls was some part of the Caribbean, because how would you make rum at 8,000 feet in Colorado? That would be weird. So yeah, it's weird. And then we tweaked the white rum into the first cachaça in America. Basically, that's made with fresh squeezed cane. It's a Brazilian national treasure, the cachaça. It's basically a fresh squeezed cane white rum. So okay, so now I got Colorado cachaça. So and all this stuff is done with this profile, this attention to the palate. So it's smooth, but it's full of flavor and all these things. And then we started working on the whiskeys, and the whiskeys were totally off the chain crazy, because I wanted to make an Irish style whiskey. Like I love Jameson, Redbreast, all that. So I wanted to make an Irish style whiskey, but they wouldn't let me do that either. They're like, you can't put Irish style or Irish-ish or whatever you want to put. My first thought was Irish-ish. You can't put Irish on a label, period, because obviously it's protected. and international
They're
law.
like, you can't use the color green. You're like, but I'm in Green Mountain Falls. You're like, no, we can't use it.
Can't use it.
You're just
Yeah,
in Mountain Falls now.
Well, they didn't want me to put Irish on a label because of all the problems with fake Irish whiskey from Prohibition era and all that. So I started arguing. I'm like, hey, we're gonna have to do this. We're gonna have to make an Irish style whiskey somehow, some way. And I just started explaining and they were worried about me pretending to be Irish whiskey, which I wasn't. I was gonna be an American Colorado grain to glass whiskey that had an Irish style to it. I argued with the federal government for a year. Highly recommend that. That is an awesome way to use your time. Just argue with the federal government for an entire year. Anyway, got permission from the government to use it. As long as it says Irish style, same font, same size. So it can't be Irish style. It has to be Irish style. As long as it's obvious. And then immediately, bigger word Colorado whiskey under it. So now you've got, it's obvious. It's got an American flag on it. It talks about Colorado proud and the heirloom grains from Alamosa and the whole thing. So it's obviously American. It's Irish style. So they agreed. I got the first permit from the federal government to put the word Irish on the label that wasn't from Ireland. Then Ireland called. They were like, slow down, cowboy. No. International law, you cannot put Irish on a label, blah, blah. So then I started talking to Ireland for an entire year. And I sent them samples and talked about my family. And I've got my family traced back to 5th century AD. So 1,500 years of history traced. So I'm talking to them about all that and sending them genealogies and sending them my grandfather's arrival in America, all sort of stuff, right? So finally, Ireland agreed. So the only
just because
distillery,
of your history and your lineage, your personal family.
Well, but also because I'm honoring Ireland. It's not going to be pretending to be Irish whiskey. It's going to be an American, a Colorado grain to glass whiskey, but it's honoring Irish traditions, like using the sherry barrels, like using some raw barley. There's a whole history to why it's Irish style, but it's a very historical, high historical academic level of analysis that gives you the Irish style. It makes it delicious. But the point is that they agreed. And so the only distillery in the world, the first, and there might be somebody else now, but the first distillery in the entire world permitted by American Ireland to use the term Irish on a label. Like that's Black Bear. So this is tradition and innovation, right? And then the other whiskey, Caribbean Cask, that came out of COVID because I was locked in the house and I was like, I need to make a lighter style whiskey that I don't feel guilty when I make cocktails with it. Because the Irish style takes forever. It's like several years of aging. It's a very difficult thing to do. I need an easier one. So I made a wheat whiskey aged in rum barrels, which is the lightest, freshest, easiest drinking whiskey ever, called Caribbean Cask. It's a wheat whiskey. It's everything's Colorado. So now I've got all these things that are kind of traditions, but also innovations. And it's really the quickest way to explain it is it's chefy. It's a chefy thing. It's chefs making liquor, you know, and it goes with food. It goes with, it's just the way we make the cuts and we focus on the hearts of the liquor and we do aging. Everything is palate and driven and really beautiful. And yeah, so we're super proud of everything at the Black Bear.
So where can people get it? If you're listening now and you got really excited by everything Victor just described, Coltrane, Cheers, your stuff's at the local liquor
most
stores.
of the places. And if you have any trouble, all you do is make sure you ask the people at your local liquor store to get it. They can get hold of a distributor, a small distributor named Flamingo. But if they're here in Colorado, they can get hold of me at the Black Bear Distillery. We're online. We're everywhere. We got like Instagram and everything else. We're everywhere. Mm-hmm. So Black Bear Distillery, they can get hold of me directly and I just send it to them.
So also people can visit on certain days and go to your tasting room, right? But it's limited.
Yeah, so Saturdays, right? Because during the week, people aren't coming up the mountain very much. And even in the summer, they're, and then Friday and Sunday, they're coming and going. But Saturday, everybody's up there in the mountains doing their thing. So we open all afternoon, to into the evening of Saturdays. We usually have some kind of event. The best thing to do about that is, Facebook, probably Black Bear Distillery, Green Mountain Falls, probably follow it. That way you get the updates of whatever's happening. Like last weekend, we had Labor Day weekend. So we had Labor Day specials, cocktails, Labor Day event. We had a food truck. We have food trucks most of the time. Next weekend, I think we've got this awesome Mexican food truck. Oh man, you got to have it. One of their tortas, man. They're killing it. Anyway, we also have specials, and I think it's game night is our theme. There's usually a theme for most of the fall and winter. And so it's really Saturday. You can come up and visit tours and tastings, get all this information. You can buy everything you want at the distillery. You can buy it in most stores. If you can't find it, you can request it, or you can just get online and get hold of me, and I'll get it to you.
Awesome. All right. Is there anything we didn't cover? Because like we kind of want to get in some other elements of this episode possibly. So that was a lot. I know it's like drinking from a fire hose every time we talked to Victor. We talked about like multiple fire hoses, like a shotgun effect, just all of them blasting.
It's a fire hose made of shotguns.
Yeah. When this guy texts me, I can tell you on my phone, Victor's texts are like this long, and it's not just one thing. It's like, oh, and we're also doing this, and it's this anniversary. Yeah. We're also doing this and this, and like, it's a lot.
I think we got like Tava opening May of 25, more to come.
Yeah.
But Black Bear running strong. Anything you want, whiskey, rum, vodka, just get hold of us. Come by and see us in Green Mountain Falls. Briarhurst Manor, where the Paragon is, a couple locations for Paragon Culinary School. You need anything about culinary training, anything. We're here at the school.
How does somebody get started at Paragon?
Yeah, so almost everything's online these days,
okay.
You know. So you get Paragon Culinary School, you know, .org, .com, all that. You go there, you read about it, you see the manual, you think, you know, if this is your speed, you know, you get hold of us. Almost all of them come and have a tour, show them around, tell them the whole story of Paragon and what we're doing. And if for somebody that's light, like it's not really their thing, like they're kind of lighter style, just want to have some fun, they usually don't come. But people that are serious, like I want to be a chef, I want to have my own place, they'll come. And after the tour, we kind of start paperwork with them. It doesn't take long. It's about an hour of paperwork. But we have 3 starts a year. Next starts in November. We started in August. We start in November. We start March. With three starts a year. It's a trimester system, 4 trimester long program. And we tell them all about it, answer any questions. I'm online 24/7. I probably got 50 emails while we're sitting here. So I get about 100, 200 a day.
Sorry, three of those were from me. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. No, but I can answer anybody's questions. They can reach out on the websites. I mean, Black Bear Distillery, Paragon Culinary School, all this stuff's online. It's on all the different platforms, all the different things. You just reach out to me and I can answer any questions. I send them a manual. I got a nice manual, explains all the programs. I shoot it over to them. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Easy to get hold of. Easy to hold of.
Well, thank you for all of that. And yeah, I think we're gonna get up to the Bear next to do some sampling at some point. So
yeah, we should definitely taste that stuff because I just explained some of it, but you really need to taste it.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. This has been a very interesting and elaborate, rich and confusing episode at times because there's so much to cover. And it's all out of order, so that was my fault.
Well, let me thank you because you talked about Club 9, right? And talk about how we were trying to revolutionize the town and the area, and all these chefs. You're a big part of that. You were in the mix in the very beginning, and look what you've done. Look at the empire you've built, man.
The empire.
It's all about promoting the local, promoting these chefs and these distillers and these brewers that are trying so hard to make this town into something better that everybody can enjoy and love, and we love it. Manitou, Green Mountain, Woodland Park, Colorado Springs. This is our world. And we want to build it and give everybody a reason to celebrate the food and wine, the whole culture. And you're a big part of that. You're like a cultural leader. And I got to thank you for that, man, because that is big.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It is an honor to report on the scene and be here for the community. And same thing Ryan was doing, the focus on the beer too. We just want to tell these stories and keep doing, helping champion our community and what's going right.
These guys out here are killing it. Eat and drink local, you guys. And if you need a place, just holler at one of us and we will definitely tell you where to go. In a good way.
Definitely.